All right, they have a rule in here. I told you about the 50% rule earlier, that you couldn't disperse. We came up with 50% that you could disperse. But you can disperse your fees, reservation fee, and third-party fees. Y'all have like golf packages up here, where you pay with the rent you'll pay for a golf package. And then you have, of course, you probably you might have fishing guides or fishing stuff. I don't know. But yeah, if you collect those sort of fees, the Act lets you take those fees and disperse them to the parties, the fishing guide or the golf course. But you got to have express written consent in your agreement with your tenant. It's got to be expressed in there, telling them that's what's happening. And the good reason for that, because if you don't, the tenants will come back to you for the money, right? Then you can say, well, in the agreement here it says we're going to disperse that. We send that on over to the guides, or we send that on over to the golf course. So really need to talk to the golf course about that. But it gives you, and reservation fees are the fees normally taken out. And you need to tell your owner, you're earning a reservation fee. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the reservation fee when it comes in, when we receive it. All right, so you need to disclose that to actually the owner and to here. If you earn any fees, you need to disclose to the owner if you're earning any kind of fees or markups. Right? It's 109. Okay. And I understand people are keeping, a lot of people keep their stuff up here till departure. Isn't that right? Departure. So you can spend that money. When do you spend the money? We had a discussion at break, I think, with you on when you can spend that money. Because if you have it till departure, you have that money and you keep it till departure, right? So when can you spend for repairs on the property? And I would say most of these softwares, when that money flows over to your owner's side, to your owner's statement, then you can spend it. You actually have a right to spend that first 50%. But you haven't got a set of books that carries that first 50% over to an owner ledger. They have a right to spend that first 50%, according to that. But if that's not your policy, that's cool. You can have that policy. So I would say the auditors should be looking at the owner statements or somewhere an owner ledger where the money flows over to that ledger only when they have a right to it. And if you're saying the right becomes at the departure time, then that's when it flows over to the owner's ledger, and that's your governing document for whether or not you have what we call as deficit spending. Spending more on a property than what you took in. And that's the big thing. They don't like that. They do not like that. All right. So that covers that part of it. Now the Act talks about administration fees, and it talks about administration fees which are reservation, cancellation, and transfer. I really like if you disclosure on, I think I told you this, I like disclosure to the tenant that it's a reservation fee rather than administration fee. I really like that cancellation fee rather than administration fee. They are administration fees, but administration fees covers all three of them. And even the Act gets a little mixed up on this sometimes. Okay. Now I've already talked about it's got to be in the vacation rental agreement. Talked about the 50%. There are some provisions in there that you can take that money out prior to tenancy, and that is the tenant commits a material breach or you refund it. You can take that money out. Sales tax. Sales tax. Everybody's collecting sales tax, right? And occupancy tax. I think you got occupancy tax and local tax up here. Local and occupancy. Right. Anybody know the sales tax? Anybody ever looked at the sales tax statute? The statute on sales tax is called accommodations tax. It's 105-164.4F. $105-164.4F. That's actually the accommodations tax. And it reads gross receipts from rental on accommodation or tax at the general tax rate. That's how it reads. Oh, wait a minute. See if I can get back to that one stay there. That's exactly how it reads. So if you want to Google 105 164.4F, it'll probably take you right. It'll take you to the general statutes, which is going to be this long, but you have to scroll down and find 105 164.4, and that's the exact reading of it. Now, what's taxable? What's taxable? Hopefully you guys have got a good grasp on this. Rent's certainly taxable. Reservation fees are taxable because it's part of the gross receipts. I think you got an occupancy tax lady coming in or somebody coming in to talk to you a little bit about that. And the local jurisdictions will pass a resolution to charge a tax in the local areas. Dare County has a resolution passed by Dare County, and which gives the authority to take to collect occupancy tax. And they're supposed to use so much of it for tourism, so much percentage for tourism. So reservation fees, I've walked into a lot of places that don't tax a reservation fee. I said, well, okay, are you liable for the reservation fee if you don't tax it? Nobody wants to answer that question, do they? Are you liable for reservation fees if you don't tax them? I got an in the back. The statute makes you liable for it. Real estate agents are liable for it. So make sure you're taxing. Your computer systems, I've seen them set up and they forgot to click the box that reservation fees were taxable. Then they figured out when I come in and we start sitting down and say, okay, let's look over a couple of your reservations and let's see what the tax rates are and see if they're computed properly. And then we find out, well, they weren't. That's because we set up reservation fee as a revenue item and we forgot to click the box as taxable. Right. So, security deposits. Now, isn't this crazy? You don't like it either, do you? Security deposits are taxable. I'll give you a lowdown on this, okay? Security deposits are taxable. That's what it says. That's what the bulletin, the technical bulletin from the Department of Revenue says, that security deposits are technical. I've even gone around and around with some of those guys about this. That makes sense, though. Because you're going to probably refund it. Of course, a lot of people don't do security deposits now because of some of these issues. That's another thing to kind of push them over the dam. But they are taxable, and then when you refund it, there's a credit going back. That's the proper way to do it, according to the law. I have noticed, though, that, and I've talked to some of the auditors, and they said they don't get really upset if it's not taxed, but at the time you deduct something from it, it's taxed then. I've seen them do that, and they are passing those audits and not getting into all the computation because it's a mental computation. Okay, now are you taxed? You also have a tax on services, right? Your repairman's charging taxes up here, sort of, right? So when you charge a tax here for damage or security deposit, it's almost a double taxation issue. It is a double taxation. So you guys go down to Raleigh, see if you can get that fixed up. But security deposits are taxable. The auditors are coming. What I've seen with the sales tax auditors coming in, they don't get too concerned as long as the bottom line comes out right. You tax it when you deduct for damages. But if somebody ever says I said that, I'll never admit it. Damage fees, taxable. Credit card fees, taxable.
The 3% that you're talking about?
No, the 3% is usually what, oh, you're talking about if you charge them? Yeah.
That's taxable.
Early and late departure fees are taxable because their trend of thought is part of the gross receipts from a rental. That's the way they think about it. Linen fees. They're taxable. There was a big issue down at the Outer Banks on the linen fees because they were being taxed, I think, when they got the linens from the company, although you can do exceptions. Anyway, it was being taxed twice taxed at this level and also taxed when somebody purchased the liddens. And that was actually, I think, the way the law read. They changed the law somewhere in there. I'm not prepared to bring that law change to you, but I do know that that occurred down there. It was a big problem. Cleaning fees are taxable. Transfer fees, if you transfer from one property to another, taxable. Are cancellation fees taxable? Come on, guys, you guys do them all the time, right? What'd you say, maybe? Hope not? I hope, we gotta hope not. What do you think? Anybody got an opinion over here?
Based on the way you do it, I say
Based on the security deposit, yeah. They're probably not taxable because of the event of a rental never occurred. So you don't have a gross receipt from rental. Probably not taxable. Pet fees, taxable. Oh, let's see this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Cancellation fee?
A cancellation fee. Now, I'll tell you what's really happening in cancellation fees. Who said cancellation fee? Yeah, I'll tell you what's really happening in cancellation fees is that they are being taxed in the Department of Revenue. I mean, how many do you have? Not many. Not many. But most people tax them and send them in, and I don't think they've said anything about that. To my knowledge, they haven't. But the cancellation fee, the rental has never occurred. The gross rental never occurred. Now, if you can put it in your computer and say non-taxable. But there's not a lot of them going on, but I've seen some of them, and they tax them and send them in. So I just think, okay. All right. Okay, now this says here, this part of this says, which is 16C. Let's see, where are we? We're on 16C. Page 4, I think, of the agreement. Yeah. Oh, before I get off the sales tax, I will tell you this. The Vacation Rental Act says funds collected for sales tax and security deposit shall not be dispersed from the trust account prior to termination of the tenancy. Prior to termination of the tenancy.
Can you say that one?
Okay, so funds collected, the Act says that funds collected for sales tax shall not be dispersed from the trust account until termination of the tenancy. That's termination when they move out. Department of Revenue doesn't look at it that way. They look at it as day of occupancy. Okay? So now are you completely confused? Yeah, I am too. I will say this, they haven't said anything when they, I understand when they come in and do those audits, that if you do it one way or consistent, you do it upon occupancy, or if you do it upon termination, as long as you're consistent, they haven't said anything or had any assessments on it. So pick up, because we have two laws contrary to each other. We have sales tax law that says upon occupancy, then we got this law that says different. And nobody's got riled up enough to change it. Okay. VRBO goes on, the VRBO. Vacation rental agreements, you got to identify the name and the address of the federally insured bank and provide accounting to the tenant if he asks. Just some generic stuff there. Now we get into a fit and habitable situation. I don't know, y'all have hurricanes up here, don't you? You don't have the, yeah, you do have the floods, don't you? You have the floods. You have the mountain, water coming down the mountain that provides the floods and stuff like that. So, and then they've got mandatory evacuations, which, if you got mandatory evacuation, and you got the travel insurance, right? So if you got travel insurance and the tenant purchased the travel insurance, if they purchase the travel insurance and then there's a mandatory evacuation, do you have any mandatory evacuations up here? Have you ever had one? I mean, where would you go? To the top of the mountain? I don't know, where would you go? I don't think you've had one up here, have you? The authorities hadn't come up and said, you got to leave. Or maybe they do, would they do that in certain areas along riverbanks or something? Have they ever done one? You have had one? to do maybe along a riverbank or if a hurricane, flood, rain from a hurricane. So you may have a mandatory evacuation. Well, if they bought insurance for it, then they're not, or if they were offered insurance for it. And the private owners can't offer insurance unless they, well, I tried to get travel insurance. And they wouldn't let me sign up. I don't know, individual owner, they wouldn't let me sign up. So my rental at the beach, I do not offer travel insurance. I just send them the money back. I don't mess with it. I just send them the money. Did you have that? Aren't you private? Did you get travel insurance?
We offer it.
You do offer it? So you signed up with
Red Sky.
Red Sky? Oh, okay, I looked at Travel Guard years ago.
They offer the travel insurance as well as damage protection. So
And do you earn a fee on that?
we do on the damage protection. I don't know about travel insurance. Figure we probably do.
Probably do.
Yeah, it's not the part of the business I've touched, but I would imagine we do.
Yeah. And the Act limits, what, 8%? You can't charge more than 8% on that. But the fit and habitable came into effect here. It's, okay, we have mandatory evacuation at the beach. We had Hurricane Isabel hit in 2003. Isabel took out the roads. You couldn't get into, as far south as you could get was Rodanthe. And below that you've got, I don't know, 7,000 rentals sitting down there, below there. So people couldn't get there. They ran the ferry system, but the ferry system couldn't bring over but so many cars in an hour. So you potentially had a rental, an oceanfront rental, that maybe was in good shape, but you couldn't get to. And I think Travel Guard was in there on that, and the Travel Guard didn't insure or didn't pay off on any of these things, and that's why I think Travel Guard's out of there. I think Red Sky's in there. But the next issue is fit and habitable. If your house is not fit and habitable, if the roof blows off and you've got damage on the inside and it's not fit and habitable, you got another issue, right? You got another issue. Then you have to refund, right? Fit and habitable versus mandatory evacuation and the coverage of insurance. Anybody knows the insurance cover fit and habitable after storm? Now, I do know this, if you've got flood, if you got flood damage, if you have leases signed and you have flood damage, no, it's wind, I think it's wind. It's either wind or flood, I think it's wind. Wind will cover your leases for lost rent, if you have a lost rent provision in your wind policy. Yeah.
I believe the trip insurance would cover under the trip interruption section if you had to be evacuated or something
Yep.
happened while you were there. Trip insurance would kick in.
They kick in under interruption.
Under trip interruption, yeah.
That would be an interruption. And what insurance are you talking about?
We have Red Sky, but I've dealt with CSA too. But
I
it's
started saying CSA is the same.
anything that interrupts your trip, like if you're supposed to stay for a week and you can only stay for 5 days, you can file a claim.
Right, or you have a death in the family.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's how that would work on that side. So you wouldn't have a refund of rent from the owner. What about fit and habitable? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, like if they're staying there and something happens and the roof blows off and they have to leave, I think that would be covered
Yeah.
under trip interruption.
That's when you get the attorneys together.
Or you can read that little pamphlet that will also put you to sleep.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, this talks about all this stuff. The tenants is to begin occupancy. It's not fit and habitable. Can't substitute a reasonable comparable property. Shall refund all payments. So that's how. Let's see. What is that section? 117C. No. B. Oh yeah. If at the time the tenant is to begin occupancy of the property, the landlord and real estate broker cannot provide property in fit and habitable, substitute a reasonable comparable property in such condition, the landlord or real estate broker shall refund all tenant all monies made by the tenant. But now we're saying we have insurance that covers that up under the interruption part of it.
If they accept insurance.
If they do the insurance. Through this act, I contemplated that.
We would probably make that anyway. so it wouldn't be.
But
used
they would do,
for-
the trip interruption would cover the hotel if they were en route and they had to stop and get a hotel, right? Or maybe they would cover the extra travel costs or inconvenience type stuff. I'm not sure that they would reimburse the rent. Does anybody know the answer to that question? I'm not sure on the trip interruption that they would, if you're on the way down there and grandma dies, you know, that's one of the covered parts of the insurance.
And they would cover the rent.
Yeah, and if you can't get to the property, in a situation where you can't get to the property, that might fall upon an interruption.
Depends on why.
So what
you
you're
can't
saying-
get to it. If you can't get to it because the road is covered in snow and everything says you have to have four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive to get.
That's
here.
a different story.
That's what I'm saying, like, if you can't get to it because of your own stupidity, I think it's different.
That's
than
different than-
something that's an act of God.
It's hard to take a Suburban over the inlet, unless you got a bridge.
We always thought if there was a state of emergency or worse call, then that was grounds.
Well, okay, if you got fit and habitable, that whole area may be closed, because you may have power lines sit down on them. So that mandatory evacuation is still in effect, which is a different way to, you know, we're getting into the technicalities of this sort of thing.
The way Red Sky described it to us is if you can prove evidence, there may not be a mandatory evacuation or even an advisory not to travel, but if the road is closed that gets to this property, and you can prove that by, you know, a newspaper article, something from the DOT, it's covered.
Then I would say that would be probably an interruption type thing.
Yes.
But they would cover your interruption expenses, they would cover the rent that you pay, right?
They would cover the rent for those nights you couldn't get there. Yes.
They would cover the rent in the hotel, right, that you had to rent, or
Your
wherever
lost
you.
rent, your lost, the rent that you lose from not being able to occupy that house.
They would cover it, like it, okay, they would
They
cover
wouldn't
that.
cover something else, but if you paid $200 a night and you couldn't get there for 2 days, they would
Yeah.
reimburse that.
Yeah, I think we're getting a lot into policies and what the coverages are and stuff like that, so, yeah, I'm not a specialist on that, but I do know what the Act says about this sort of stuff. Yeah, and D is where the cleaning fee came in. You see, this is, C talks about the administration fees. Here's where vacation, you can only charge the tenant for, under C, reservation, transfer, and cancellation, because it's in the Act. And then D is this a la carte item, which came later, and they added a cleaning fee. So you can charge a mandatory cleaning fee to every tenant. So. Tenant Security Deposit Act. Let's see, where are we here? Cover this. Yeah, and okay. Our next section on here talks about security deposits. Let's see, where are we? Massachusetts. Applicability of the Tenant Security Deposit Act. Okay. So, the Act, the Tenant Security Deposit Act, which is GS 4250, says you got to deposit security deposits in a trust account. Okay? So does this Act. Okay, now, on this Act, you cannot provide a bond in lieu of maintaining security deposits in a trust account. If you manage a whole bunch of apartments in Raleigh, North Carolina, and you got $1 million sitting in there, you can provide a bond rather than keeping that money into a trust account. If you're an owner. They don't let real estate brokers do that, but they let owners do that. If you're an owner out of Chicago, an LLC out of Chicago, then you can do it. You can provide a bond. You can provide a bond. So, real estate brokers cannot provide a bond. You got to keep the money in your trust account. It's the same sort of thing. And all, in addition to the Tenant Security Deposit Act, you can deduct long-distance telephone call charges. Do people have that anymore? You got that anymore? I don't even have a telephone in my unit anymore. But I guess you could have. You have it up here?
Telephones are required in the town.
Here you have to have landlines.
You have to have landlines that are required by
City ordinance.
city ordinance. Well, maybe I better look at the ordinance down there, County. I'm in trouble. I don't have one. I took it out.
Well, the problem up here is if you dial 911, it may go to Bristol, Virginia.
Oh, is that the reason for the ordinance? Plus, sometimes you ride around the mountain, you lose connection. Yeah. Down the coast, they've got coverage pretty much covered down there. At one time, you couldn't call in the house, you had to walk out on the deck. Walk out on the deck. Okay. Okay, let's see. Oh, we're talking about tenant security deposits. Let's see, we got another one here. Cable television charges. I guess you might have some of that.
That's like pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So, yeah, the tenant security deposit ain't gonna let you do that, but this does. The Vacation Rental Act lets you do that. And Vacation Rental Act takes it from 30 days and moves it to 45. I think probably everybody's aware of this. 30 to 45. And long-term rentals is 30 days, and if you can't do it in 30 days, then you gotta account to them, and then you got 60 days in long-term rentals. So this allows you a little extra time to do that, to accumulate those charges.
What section is that in?
GS 42A18A on the bottom right, can you see that? Yeah. I'll put all the sites on the bottom here.
Now you tell us.
Yeah. Now here's the Tenant Security Deposit Act. You know, everybody's probably familiar with this. This is long-term rentals. If you define and take a security deposit, this is the only uses you can use for it. Non-payment of rent, cost of water and sewer, actual damage not including wear and tear, ordinary wear and tear. And I think the Attorney General uses the standard of filthy as between ordinary wear and tear and some kind of damages from to the premises. They use the standard of filthy, whatever that is. Now, in other words, if the carpet is just worn down from this 15-year-old carpet, you can't charge them with carpet damage because they've been walking over it. It's normal wear and tear. Non-fulfillment, you can deduct from security deposit for non-fulfillment. Unpaid bills become a lien. Wow. Takes, what, 6 months to get a lien, and you got 45 days to... So that really doesn't come into play for us on the cost of re-renting after breach. So this act spells out, the Tenant Security Deposit Act spells out what you can do. The act of the Tenant Security Deposit, of the Tenant Security Deposit and the Vacation Rental Act is a little different by the phone charges and the cable charges and the 45 days. So. Okay, this is 42. Final in 60 days, provide a deduction from 30 days. Only actual damages. No, I think we just. There's no automatic forfeitures or termination fees. You don't automatically forfeit a security deposit for they didn't show up at a short-term rental. You don't automatically forfeit. You got to have damages. You got to have some side of damages. Okay, so you can't just automatically forfeit. If they cancel 60 days out, you can't have an automatic forfeiture. Okay? You got to try to re-rent and mitigate. Okay. Somebody asked me a little while ago about $200 security deposit check sitting in the account that's 2 years old. I've seen them as long as 10 years old going back. Here's the number for the Estates Department. You can just call that number and you get an auditor on the end of the line that will guide you to the statute. All this stuff is on the internet. It'll guide you to the statute or to the place on their website under the Department of Treasury. This is handled by the Department of Treasury. And this is the Escheat and Unclaimed program. You can escheat that $200 check if you can't find them. The steps you got to go through, the steps are listed on this website, and then you can send the money to them. Okay, now if all of a sudden we get involved with the trust account and your liabilities don't equal the cash and you're $5,000 over, if you can't figure out what that is, if you can't find some kind of analysis of what that money is, you're just $5,000 over, you have no accounting, eventually you'll have to escheat that money. Eventually you have to escheat that money. And that's unknown money. You don't know the owner of those funds. They like to know the owner of the funds. These guys, if you call that number, you get on with the auditor, they're more than helpful to help you escheat this money. But, and the commission doesn't like to see stuff. Every time we saw old checks sitting in there, we would recommend calling this and it's cheating. And then we'd go do a re-audit and see if you handle it. And that might be something that, okay, you need to fix this, we'll be back to see you. So, anybody got any questions on the streets? We talked a little bit earlier about the payee on the check might not be the actual person who deserves the money on the utility issue, the electric issue. So keep that in mind. VRBO and Airbnb. Don't you love? So, are you, everybody putting individual houses on there? Is that what you're doing? Or are you putting, I see some people put one house on there and use it as a, what do you call it? Bait and switch. What was it? I called up to rent a house in Boone, and the house was vacant all year long. I mean, all the whole summer. Oh, all right. I'll be able to get this one. So I emailed them, and oh, that house is taken. Wait a minute, the calendar says it's open, but I have another comparable property. So people use it as a bait and switch type thing. But okay, a VRBO, what are they sending you? They send you money, what, maybe a week after receipt? All right. And can you understand the accounting? Okay. That's the main problems I've seen with VRBO, especially Airbnb. You understand the accounting. Of course, they send you the money. I think it's electronic. Is it electronic transfers? It's electronic transfers. I think that's what you're doing. Just kind of automatically goes in the account. Right, and then you may be able to figure it out, you may not. But you got to identify those funds in some manner. And if you can't, you got to get on the phone and spend about 2 hours with one of those guys trying to figure out what this money is. Airbnb is especially bad at that. And are they sending you the money after occupancy? Right, so you have no responsibility for the money until it hits your trust account. You have no responsibility for that money. The commission does not view you having responsibility for that.
But if you have a rental home and you're doing rentals, but that homeowner is also sending VRBOs, we can't take that money from a third party, though.
What are you talking about now? You've got an owner that advertises on VRBO, but it's not through your company? Okay, and we continue on with that.
But we can't take those funds if it's through a third party.
I thought to participate with a third-party agent, you can participate, but they can't receive the money. It has to go directly from the renter to your trust account. It can't go through a third party.
But it's processed through VRBO, is that what you're talking about?
I thought you couldn't.
Yeah, the commission doesn't like that. I know they don't like that, but they haven't got any teeth on that, but they're considered a facilitator. So you have no control over that, except, well, it takes them about a week or maybe 4 or 5 days to get the money to you. They send you 50% of everything, right? Which throws your books off, right? Your accounting software take care of that?
We're not doing it.
Because they send you 50% of everything, right? And sometimes you can't even, it doesn't add up. So then you got to allocate it, right? You got to allocate that money.
So can I ask a question about that allocating? So, from whatever your total rate is that you're charging your tenant, Airbnb charges a processing fee, so they are keeping 7% of that. So then you have to account for that loss of funds once that money comes to you. A way you do that is by doing an upcharge to cover that difference. So in other words, on Airbnb, your rental rate is a little bit higher to cover that fee that they're taking.
It's usually around 8% or 10%,
Yes, 8%.
whatever.
So then you've got that discrepancy in your trust accounting. And so the way we were told to handle it is to set up an account for portal adjustment, basically is what we call it. So that that extra 8% we're charging goes into that portal adjustment fund. So when the Airbnb money comes into our trust account, which is less than the total reservation cost, we then pull from that portal adjustment to make up that full
Well, who takes
reservation.
care of that expense? Who takes care of the 8%? Who pays the 8%? You or
The
the
tenant.
owner?
The tenant.
No, well, let's say you, instead of getting $1,000, you get 920, whatever.
Right.
You get whatever, so you get that $900 in. So you actually got an expense sitting there of that $180 or whatever it is. You got that $80 expense in there. So the net rent to the owner is going to be less. Or do you take care of that fee? Does that fee come out of your,
We upcharge.
so you upcharge the tenant?
We upcharge
Or the
the
owner.
tenant. So that what the rate is on Airbnb is different than what's on our site, because we're having to upcharge so that we
So
are
you send
made
them
whole.
a bill after you get through?
Who?
The tenant.
What the tenant is seeing on Airbnb is the total rate, that's.
Plus
what
that 8%.
It includes that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that we're made whole, the owner's made whole.
Right. So they end up paying.
Correct.
They end up paying. So what are you saying as far as your books?
So my question is, as far as the real estate commission is concerned, how our software is handling it is, we have this direct deposit, ACH deposit coming in from Airbnb, and let's just round it, that it's $1,000, but the actual cost of that reservation is $1,040.
The cost of the tenant. Cost of the tenant's a little higher.
Correct. So, this is hard to describe.
So you actually, if you really think about it, in essence, it's really, you increase the rent to take care of that charge, so you've actually done what we were talking about earlier. It's really a kind of on the owner's side.
Owner's side upcharge, and then we're running it into the reservation from this portal adjustment, which is where that additional money is.
So what flows
allocated.
over to the owner's statement?
It does,
The 1,040
yes.
flows over the owner's statement, and then a 40 comes off of it, or something like that?
Yes,
So that's a fair disclosure.
okay.
It's actually the owner paying. If an auditor asks you, the owner is paying.
Gotcha.
It's an agreement on your owner's side. Yeah. Somebody have a question over here?
I was just gonna say, we use a site called MyBooking,
How?
and it actually does all those calculations itself. Like, they book on Booking.com, Airbnb, VRBO, Flipkey, TripAdvisor, any of those. It goes through them, and they automatically have some weird formula. I don't know what they do, but they mark it up from our information, and then we actually have the owner reimbursing us for the travel. The travel agent commission is what we consider it. But it's called MyBookingPal.
Yeah, but then you got to figure, what's the 8%? What's the basis for the figuring of the 8%?
It's
Because if the
whatever-
8% is figured on the basis from Airbnb as 1,040,
Mhm.
that's going to be different from using a basis of 1,000.
Mhm.
Yeah, that sort of stuff just drives you nuts.
It does.
Did you have a question?
I do. Are you aware of any rules or regulations from the state on VRBOs and HOAs?
Nothing to know of. Of course, your HOA documents would control whether or not it is an area that you can rent. Some of the documents and declarations and covenants say you can't rent. Not many of them do that anymore. If you can't rent, then you got a violation of the covenants or the declaration of covenants, and that's an HOA issue, and the HOA would pursue that owner. Yeah, it's an HOA. It wouldn't be a real estate commission issue. Wouldn't be a real estate commission issue. What about any other questions on this Airbnb and VRBO? They don't call it VRBO on the website. Verbo is what they call it.
But now,
Home away.
right now, because a tenant, because the agreement has to have that upfront language in our agreements, does it not have to have it on that VRBO and Airbnb site? You know, that language is supposed to be at the top of each rental agreement?
What language are you talking about?
From the vacation rental.
From the vacation rental act, you know, that first paragraph. that we-
Well, VRBO is just the facilitator, so once you get a reservation coming in, you can accept it or not, right? So when you accept it, you can actually upload a lease onto VRBO and send them a lease and tell them what to do. Sign it and send it back. That's what, isn't that what everybody's doing?
We don't tell them to sign it and send it back, we just ask for money.
Just ask for
And
the
then you
money.
get money.
Well, you better, I would
send it to 'em.
say you better put in there, sign and send it
The
back.
problem is now the VRBO
To show the effort.
Airbnb are on mobile devices, they're driving through Banner Elk, putting it in, and they're in our door before there's any possibility of coming up with a document.
Right.
Some of the
Well, you-
vacation rental software.
If they, don't you have something that you sign that has that jargon on it, that stuff on the information when they sign in? You got some kind of something they sign, and on there, you should have all that stuff in here. You should be able to get on a lot of them signed. I mean, don't you, well, I don't know, some people come in after
But you
hours,
ask
so.
any of those guests or tenants if they thought that's what they were agreeing to when they went online.
Yeah, but on mine, when they send me an invitation to do it, I've got the option to take it. One of my options is I'll send them a lease and say, we'll accept it, sign the lease and send it back.
Once they submit the payment to VRBO with a credit card number and all of that, I believe VRBO, is telling them that you are responsible for whatever, and that's an agreement, wouldn't it be?
They're expressing their financial
Yeah.
agreement, but they're not using the language that.
Well,
we-
yeah, VRBO is just a facilitator. They're just the advertiser. They collect the money, which the commission doesn't really like. The money comes to you. So, but it's your responsibility to get, to give them a lease, give them a vacation rental agreement. And just like we said in the act, it's enforceable as long as you get it to them.
So the commission doesn't like that they get the money, but they're not gonna
They haven't got any teeth into it.
discipline you.
The law is probably gonna have to change to get teeth into that. Because they don't have an agreement, with the owner to rent and, provide for compensation to rent the house. But they may look into changing the law on that. I know they're looking at that. So one of the commission members is from, the Outer Banks. If you guys probably, you got a commission member on there representing the mountains or anything? Yeah, you had, Elmer Jenkins was on there for a period of time? Don't we have somebody, who's Jenkins? Yeah, Elmer was on there for a period of time. Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Question, one more.
Okay.
As far as trust accounts go, is there any specific requirements for setting up trust accounts?
A federal insured bank or institution authorized to do business in North Carolina. And I think the best way to do that is to walk into a bricks and mortar bank.
Now, Bank of America, for instance, they won't allow you to actually put the name trust in the bank account title,
They won't?
Unless you have a
Company.
Ours won't locally, they say you have to have a trust agreement, like a,
Oh, see, you got a banker that's looking for a trust agreement.
that's what they're looking for, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole different bank account.
Escrow account. You don't use trust
So
account,
you can call it
you have to
escrow,
call it an escrow account, because Bank of America does get confused.
so call it escrow, the title of the.
Yes, it'll
It's
still.
got to be in the
escrow.
designation.
Okay.
So-
Still has the Bank of America.
The reason for all that is so that if you go bankrupt or insolvent for some odd reason, go into receivership, and you've got a good, I've handled a couple of these, and if you've got good accounting for the money in your trust account, you got $1.5 million in there, and you got $1.5 million in liability set up, this is who the money belongs to. The receiver, or you can't get to that trust account and liquidate the trust account. When you got a total mess in the trust account, you just got funds in there and you're short in there, that's a whole different situation. So the last thing you want to do before you pass away is take money out of trust.
I ain't worried about that.
If you want to protect your clients, keep the money in trust. Go bankrupt. I've seen people go bankrupt, keep the money in trust, and the commission not touch it. I've seen them go bankrupt.
Take my license?
I've seen them go bankrupt.
die.
Oh gosh. We've had some funny things happen up there. Matter of fact, one of these things happened when I was here over in Banner Elk auditing. I don't remember who it is, hope you're not in here. I don't think you're in here. It was so funny, I was off in Trust County, I'd been there one day, I was coming back the next day, and I remember having to walk up these steps, and the broker's on the phone talking. And I'm just about to the top of the steps, and he says, I can't do that today, the blankety blank auditor from the real estate commission too. So I stopped and, I'm a little early. Looks like we're about out of time, I think, but I got one final thing for you. You know, I worked for the state for a number of years. I hadn't figured out yet why I did that, but I did. So, I always pass on this little joke. It's about my kids. After I'd gone to work for the commission, I had a child in 1999, and there's a little boy, and one day he's out in the yard playing with his buddies. There's two other buddies, and I just happened to overhear them talking. And so one little boy says, "My daddy's so fast, he can shoot an arrow and catch it before it hits the tree." I'm overhearing this situation. Second little boy says, "Ah, shucks, that's nothing. My daddy's so fast, he can shoot a gun and catch the bullet before it hits the tree." That's pretty fast. So I'm waiting to hear what my son's going to say. It's about time for him to speak up. He thinks for a minute. He says, "Well," he says, "my dad works for the state of North Carolina. He gets off work at 5, but he's home about 3 every day." Thank you, I'll be around if you got some more questions.